episode 23, unless both me and Alexander got it wrong, which fans of the show notice sometimes I get that wrong, or I get overly critical about it. You may notice that we are actually here again, not between two ferns, but we are actually back at the other set. When you watch the YouTube videos, it looks like between two ferns, but nicer. We are back here at the School of Metaphysics in Palatine, my spiritual home, and I have the great honor today of having a dear friend of mine, Mike Maffa. Mike Maffa is a teacher here at the School of Metaphysics. In fact, was one of my first teachers here at the School of Metaphysics.
At this location.
Yeah. And he is also currently the National Dream Coordinator, is his national position, which he hosts and serves in for the national organization. How are you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing very good. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
No, I'm so glad to have you on. I've been wanting to have more people from the School of Metaphysics on, especially as getting ready to, travel off to Virginia. I want to make sure I honor my home. And I'm especially happy to have you be my first guest from the school because, you're one of the, we've known each other 11 years now when you think about it.
Right. Right when you came from Urbana to here.
Yep, when I came from Urbana. Try to make sure you're talking into the mic. And travel with it. But yeah. It was right after I had graduated from the University of Illinois, the Urbana School of Metaphysics. We have a mutual friend, Scott Hilburn.
Scott Hilburn.
Yeah, one day I got to see if he can get on the show. I'd have to maybe go down to Austin.
That would be a good time, and he'd be a wonderful interview.
Oh, my God. I would love to go to one of his retreats.
Yep.
Well, we're not really here to talk about Scott. Hi, Scott. I got to send him this. But no, we're here to talk about something that I'm actually pretty passionate about, which is dreams. And here at the School of Metaphysics, I like to call it the system we use is the universal language of mind. That's how I describe it.
Right.
But please educate our guests. Tell them a little bit about it.
Okay, so what we use, the language or platform, you said system, that we use to interpret dreams is, like you said, universal language of mind. And in essence, what we've taken, and the founder, but Barbara Condren, who's the one that wrote the Dreamers Dictionary, and actually this past weekend I found out also from one of our area directors, Carrie Keller, that it was derived from the Rosetta Stone. I don't know all that history from back in thousands of years ago when there was in that world and in that time there was already an understanding or a knowing that there were different languages throughout the world, right? However expansive it was at that time, and that there was a universality that needed to, that was already occurring when they found them. And no matter what language you spoke, it was the language of images. And that's
with the Egyptian hieroglyphics, right?
Yes.
Oh.
So that's, I guess, was the seed idea or the foundation or the impetus to create this language for interpreting dreams.
Yeah. Now, obviously, and a huge book recommendation for any of the audience who wants to learn about dream interpretation. You can find the book maybe on Amazon, but for sure on som.org. We'll probably throw a link in the description. The Dreamers Dictionary. Now, one of the things I always tell people, because, I run into a lot of different types of folks, and not everyone, is someone who might watch the show or like us who, we believe in this kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
We believe in, a spiritual universe, and obviously we're very big into dreams. So I really got in the habit of being able to talk to people and play a little bit of a skeptic, speak to the skeptic, speak to a devil's advocate. And as a side, because I think good spiritual teaching should stand on its own, no matter if there's a other side or anything. But I tell you, the one thing I don't even bother with any of that is the universal language of mind. It works for interpreting dreams. I have seen it work for a decade. I would say I have a 95% success rate with helping people understand their dreams. And, why do you think that is?
Once you learn the language and the symbols, it does make sense. A couple symbols that we can throw out there, like car. If, you have a dream and there was a car in it. Car represents physical body. So why is that? Well, the car is what's used in this earthly plane to move you from place to place. Well, the physical body is what's used to move, the soul. The soul incarnates into the physical body, and the body is the vehicle to move the soul. So the vehicle we use to get into to take us places is a car.
Yeah, what I recall, Dr. Barbara Condren being one who wrote the Dreamer's Dictionary, which right now is kind of the authority on the universal language of mind.
Right.
And again, phenomenal book, really good to keep next to your bed. Is that you're trying to translate an image, a picture, an object from the movie that is your nightly dream, the interactive play, or
The movie, yeah.
yeah, people might call it virtual reality these days, that, and you're trying to translate that into like a mental happening. And what I recall that she said is, you're looking for the function of the thing, not the form. And you're trying to, translate that to like its mental equivalent. Does that sort of sound right to you?
That makes sense, yes. So you don't look at the form of it. Now, eventually, we can use form and function, but the beginning, the beginning of it, yes, just the function, how it's used, because we don't take dreams literal.
Exactly. A lot of people find that hard to believe, or are very reassured when they hear that.
Right. Whether you're flying or dying, or there's a car, or animals are another good one. Animals represent habits. Well, why is that? Well, animals operate on habitual behavior. They don't have the reasoning that humans do. So their life is about, they have memory, they have feelings, they know where there's food, they know where there's pleasure, they know where there's shelter. So they operate under that manner. And then it's beneficial, though. So it's interesting because as we talk about animals, it's universal. So whenever you have an animal in your dream, that means habitual behavior. How are you being habitual? Well, the function then is, and the form is, what kind of animal? Could have been a dog, a cat, a lion. It could be, something. So maybe you love dogs. Maybe you're afraid of dogs. So how does that function into your life, that particular animal? If it's a bear, that we had one recently where it was a bear, but it was very calm and tame and timid. So that would be a habit that could overtake you and has very powerful, but wasn't acting that way in that particular time.
Yes, there's a little bit of like a nuance to interpreting the symbols.
Right. So it's universal and it's very personal to the dreamer.
Yeah, I've found a lot of people, and I think I have swayed many of them. But as I've taught this stuff for a long time, and a lot of people have questions. They're like, how can it be universal? Like, isn't there like a personal meaning? And touching on what you said is well, yeah, there's a universal thing, because we're talking about like the function of this object, person, place, or thing. And I think there's really sound logic in universal language of mind. But then there's a personal meaning on top of it, because it's like, and I think the classic example, you go to like a dog. Okay, well, we would say dog's like a habit. But then you would say, well, say you really love dogs. It's a habit you like. Say you were super afraid of dogs. You got bit by a dog when you were like 6.
Exactly.
A habit you're afraid of.
Right. Exactly. And then we're only speaking of one symbol. So a dream has many symbols. And
Yeah.
It's so interesting how it's fascinating, actually, how the symbols, the order that they come into play, and then what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's how the dream gets put together. So the whole function of that is very, very interesting. And it's genius how it comes to us.
Yeah. Now, there's a couple questions, I was actually so blessed. It'll probably be about 2-3 weeks from when this goes out, but I had the honor of being the third time on the National Dream Weekend, which we just hosted.
Just finished.
Yeah. And I was giving a little lecture on, a little talk on the universal language of mind. But people, they hear enough from me. I want to hear from you. What's the purpose of a dream? Why do people even dream at night?
So yeah, we spend about a third of our life sleeping.
Gosh.
Right. So sometimes some less, some more, and really the I don't want to say the only way. The traditional way to enter into a dream is through sleep.
Yeah.
You can even take your experiences in your waking life and interpret that as a dream, but that's a little bit different.
We actually had a guest on the show who that was the whole topic we were talking about.
Okay.
That was Jai,
Okay.
a friend of ours.
So then that's a little more advanced. Yet, if we wouldn't, it would not have been set up this way unless it wasn't important that you really enter a dream. You can only enter when you're sleeping, and we spend a third of our life doing that. So the purpose of sleeping is to rest the physical body, which is what I always thought of. I was the son of 2 immigrant parents, so it's interesting that dreams weren't really important until I came to the School of Metaphysics.
Yeah, I mean that's true for a lot of people.
And I thought they were really, I really pushed them away for a long time.
Yeah,
So
that's
then
also true for a lot of people.
Right. I was like, this is dumb, this is silly. And then I remember keeping notes of what all the symbols were, and I was like, I realized, why am I doing this? So to answer your question, it's a way to assimilate what occurred during our waking experience 1 or 2 days prior. And the reason for that is since we operate mainly on their habitual behavior, the same thoughts over and over again. And there's teachings that we can have. I've heard 40,000, 50,000 thoughts a day. That number seems high, but whatever the number, even if it's 10,000, it's a lot of thoughts, or 20,000.
Yeah.
It's a lot of thoughts a day, and most of them are on repeat. So the dream allows us to see where we were going in mind and in thinking 1 or 2 days prior. And I've had plenty of examples where I have a dream and I wake up and I'm like, come on, this is what the dream. So I'm actually arguing a little bit with my subconscious mind, which is never wrong. And this is what you gave me. And then after I settle that down, I interpret the dream and I can reflect back. Oh yeah, I was doing this and this and this in my thinking, and either not aware of it or partially aware of it. Even if I was aware of it, I wasn't really assimilating to doing something different, and oftentimes not aware of it at all. So dreams are allowing us to wake up to our thinking.
Yeah, I've heard it said a lot of times the main purpose of dreams, because there's other things that can happen in the dream state. You know, I'm sure some of our audience probably had like a precognitive, like a prophetic dream, or maybe been lucky enough to astral project. I mean, I just want to know, what's a guy got to do to astral project in his dreams, and not have to put in a lot of work. That's how do I cheat? But jokes aside, I've often heard it's like inner mind to outer mind communication. But I like how you described it as assimilating, because it's trying to get them to get clarity in the mind.
Well, and it's just that inner mind and outer mind, because the outer mind is what we're doing in the physical when we wake up. We're using our conscious outer mind as we're moving through with our 5 physical senses. We need to do that. And when we sleep, we're taking, I think like a switch. We sleep, the outer mind turns off basically. We're still alive and thinking and functioning, but all that thinking and functioning is transferred to subconscious mind.
Yeah, I mean, do you remember the little graphic I put in my talk with like the mind triangle and the circles?
Right.
I made that myself.
Right.
I've gotten a lot of use out of that graphic and out of the years.
And that's the inner and the outer mind. So
Exactly.
one's receptive, one's more. I use the word aggressive. It's not aggressive. Doesn't mean like angry, but of action. That's what aggressive is. So there's the inner receptive mind and the outer more aggressive mind, and they both have a relationship. It benefits us to build that relationship. That's really a lot of the purpose of this lifetime.
Well, what you said earlier that, stuck with me too is it's like, the subconscious mind is never wrong. And what I always take that to mean is it's like, when you're dreaming and, you could say there's this message in the dream, or it's telling you, hey, this is what like actually happened in your mind. Like waking you might have thought this, this, and that. But when you interpret the symbols, like this is what actually happened. And that's because, the subconscious mind is where your mind takes place. It's where you process many thoughts, create new thought forms, where thought forms that manifest into our daily happenings come from and happen. So, of course, it's right because it's showing you the truth. It's showing you the mind.
It's reflecting exactly what you imprinted on it. So,
like
in essence, what happens is I was sharing this in the class that I teach, and a little bit when I opened up the hotline on Friday and a little bit on Saturday, that the circuit or the cycle is during our waking experience, the conscious mind is impressing or pushing up against or imprinting is a better word maybe.
Yeah.
Impressing, imprinting upon subconscious mind. And it receives it, okay. And then you sleep, and then subconscious mind expresses back to conscious mind. This is what you were thinking. And it's good to note that it doesn't mean that we were physically doing that. And we may have physically taken that action, but at least we were thinking that.
Yeah. And, one of the things when I've taught here and I'm trying to teach new students or anyone about the nature of subconscious mind, because you said it's the receptive part, is, it really seems like your subconscious mind is somewhat like a garden. It's like soil. And anything with a seed can grow in it. And one of the things that you learn through dreams is that, like, a weed can grow right next to a tomato plant happily. Anyone who's gardened knows I never planted that weed there. And it's not supposed to be there. Well, it is. And that's how our mind works. And funny enough, like soil in like a dream would represent like subconscious mind stuff.
Yep, the substance or the existence of subconscious mind.
Yeah. I swear, like, I don't know how much we're going to be able to go into like the actual system, but anyone interested in dream interpretation, som.org, dreamschool.org, you can find out. It's such a robust thing.
Let's just give that example because people can relate to that. So gardening or dirt. So if you think of, you plant whatever seeds or seedlings, tomatoes, cucumbers, whatever it may be. You plant those seeds. It could be vegetables or flowers, whatever it may be. You plant it in the dirt. You cover it. You water it. You give it its attention, and then you're happy when you see the seed pop through the ground. And then, because you physically saw something happen.
Yeah.
It would benefit us to be aware that things are occurring below the surface, in the unseen, in the dirt, right?
Yeah.
It didn't just pop out. The seed below, the seed actually cracked, it germinated, and it began doing its thing. And then once it came through and you saw it. So that's the same way the subconscious mind and conscious work. So by the time something happens out in our physical waking experience, there's already been stuff happening in the unseen. It didn't just happen just now. So we've contributed to that. And it's not about fault either. People think when I contribute to an experience, it's my fault. It's not about fault. So we're a contributor to that experience through our thinking. So if we don't like the experience, we can reflect back, it wasn't just coincidence or haphazard or luck, good or bad luck. Something through the way we move through our thinking and our actions is a contributor to this experience today.
I'm so glad you said that. And it's something that I kind of take for granted because, even though I'm like imminently, going to part ways in some ways with the School of Metaphysics. And I've also been exploring like some other forms of spiritual practice. I do take for granted that this has been my home and that, it's a school of metaphysics. It's a school of the mind. And that an understanding of the mind is almost second nature to me because it's something I've studied and worked with for 10 years. And on the show, we've been talking a lot about like the role of like energies and emotions in the body in our spiritual practice. But, a thorough, or at least a slightly advanced understanding of the mind is vital to any spiritual practitioner aspirant's growth. And that's one of the huge roles that dream interpretation can add to, a spiritual practice, because now you see, because when you're in your conscious mind, your conscious mind's a liar,
It can lie, it can deceive,
Yeah.
and I've had that where I wake up from a dream and I'm like, come on. So I'm already, and I've been doing this for a while, the spiritual practice as well as leading dreams, and I still wake up from time to time like, that's what you
Same.
gave me, man. And then I have to settle that down because the conscious mind doesn't want to own up or recognize or really be honest.
Oh, I've had absolute poopy days. I'm not swearing because I have a respect for my friend and he doesn't like when I swear in the school. So I'm going to honor that. But I've had absolute like poop days. And then I go to bed and I have this dream and I interpret the symbols and it was like, oh my God, my inner self loved that. And I was like, what the heck? But, I even think of like Solomon, who I know the head of the School of Metaphysics, Dr. Daniel, is a big fan of. Solomon says in Ecclesiastes, he says, a sad countenance, a sad face produces like a wise heart. He says something along those lines because we grow through our challenges, and understanding our dreams can help us to navigate like which way we want to grow spiritually. It really seems like spiritual growth is really quickly and powerfully reflected in dreams. Why do you think that is? And do you agree with that?
I think so. Yeah. Why is it that way? I'm not sure why. I know it's only dreams are one avenue or one doorway into our spiritual growth.
Yeah.
And where we heavily promote it or do a lot of I'll say promote. How would you say in school? I'm trying to think of a good
It's
word.
it's
Either promote it or give it a lot of attention.
we give it a lot of attention. We
Give a lot of
encourage the study of
yeah,
it
because
highly.
we're already doing it. We're already dreaming before we even came into the school, and I
Yeah.
think a lot of people see dreams as this neat thing or this weird thing. They have
Random
a
thing.
random thing, not tying it to spirituality at all or to the self. And other people that are into spirituality don't tie dreams into spirituality either. So I'm not sure why it had such an impact. It probably because we were doing it even when the minute we're born, before we,
Yeah.
and throughout life. Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, I have my theories on why it does, but I mean, just both Mike and I have taught the program here, and a big part of that teaching is you have your students come in, you talk about dreams almost every class, and just it's been my experience that when I don't want to call them the kids because they're usually adults and they're usually older than me, but when the students come in and they really start getting involved in spiritual practice, like their dreams reflect stuff that's happening spiritually to them, like almost immediately, and I would say almost universally. Has that kind of been your experience with like students who get involved with dreams?
Yes. And actually, as you were talking, I was even thinking a little more about your prior question too. Maybe the impact is so great because we're constantly doing it back and forth every single.
Yeah, as a
dreaming,
student
dreaming, waking.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The cycle's like constantly. It's constantly repeating, constantly getting refreshed.
Well, like you were saying earlier, some people think they just don't put stock in dreams. A lot of people think it's a random thing, it's a senseless thing, or it's a neat thing. And it's always been weird to me because it's like, this is really a very big part of our lives. We just don't often remember it. Like, how could this whole thing that happens to every human being who's ever lived, all of human beings who are living, and it has no purpose? It's literally just, oh yeah, then my brain does this because that's just not, other than having like a vestigial organ, like an appendix, nothing in your body is without purpose.
Correct.
And now this is your mind,
That's a good way to put it. So it wouldn't be set up that way if it didn't have a purpose or a meaning.
And another thing, because we were talking earlier and you said, dreams aren't literal, like I find that some people, because that's where we normally go, with, oh, I dream about my mom and like maybe she died. Or I think the more classic one is like, oh my God, my partner cheated on me, or I cheated on my partner. Like, is this some big thing? But my experience is that it almost never is. I won't say it never is because some people, they're kind of psychic. But, why do you think it's not literal?
There is a need for the conscious. Well, I guess as humans, for us to know the conscious mind has its purpose. To reason, the power of the conscious mind is reasoning.
That's what we always say in the School of Metaphysics.
And the power of the subconscious mind is intuition. So, how can I put this into words? We don't want to use the conscious mind for everything, right? And I maybe search for a better word. It leaves for limited growth if you use the conscious mind for everything, right?
Yeah. Or at least a lot of pain.
Yeah, everything isn't made to make sense. I think every person can go back to an experience where they used intuition, or when they had something and they looked at it from a distance. I've got two boys, and I was recently talking to my son who graduated college, and we were going through an experience when he was playing sports, and he got cut from a team. He was a sophomore in high school, and got cut from all these travel sports, and then played the high school sport. And it seemed like the worst thing that was happening. I'm surprised he continued with the sport. And here we are. It was probably 6 years after the event. He graduated college and all that. And we were talking about a friend of his that he's partnering to make like side jobs and make money.
Yeah. He did some good stuff with our lawnmower.
And he said to me, that's the best thing that ever happened to me. So if he were to use only reasoning, only the conscious mind in that experience, I think he would have left the sport. He would have left a lot and never met this friend and never really been able to see. And even if it isn't about the friend or the making money, he's able to see that in the moment there can be pain in the physical experience, and that's valid. We're not saying that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Or, oh, you're okay, you're fine now. It's valid. It's just to move through that and then be removed from it. In this case, it's 6 years, and reflect. And I was like, oh, wow, that wasn't that bad. That allows us to move through other experiences, even though they may be difficult, and see there's another side. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There's another side to this thing.
Well, and even going beyond that, it's like there's more to, even if you're not spiritual at all, there is more to your mind than your conscious mind. And, science, I mean, that's generally an accepted scientific fact, Sigmund Freud, people say he kind of had some weird ideas, maybe whatever. But I mean, the man was a genius. He formally got into human collective thought that, hey, there's a big part of your mind that's subconscious. And, your dreams are an expression of that. If you look at your dreams just literally, you're just going to your conscious mind. And I think that's why people are so want to take dreams literally, because we do think that everything is our conscious mind. We're so unaware that there's other parts to ourselves.
Exactly. It's the go-to.
Yeah.
And they're not wrong for doing that.
It's pretty obvious,
We essentially, we are taught to build our intellect, basically from the minute we go to school. But we're not really taught to build a relationship with the intuitive side.
Unless you had some real hippie parents.
Right, unless you got some hippie parents.
Yeah.
Right.
So, just switching gears like a little bit, what got you all invested in dreams? I mean, I know obviously you joined the School of Metaphysics, but this has been a really big passion of yours. You've been leading the weekly dream interpretation webinars for a while. You've been doing was it 3 or 4 years of the National Dream Weekend?
I was thinking about that. It's been at least 3, maybe 4, but 3 or 4. So what got me into it?
Yeah, like why is this like a passion of yours?
And it reminds me of what I was sharing with my son is I'm going to even go back a little bit to what was happening, as a first cycle student 12 years ago when I began at School of Metaphysics. So I came here initially to get back into meditation, not to learn, but I was doing some meditation practices through a Qigong thing that I was doing. Stopped doing that, wanted to get back into meditation. And then I really thought, we do dreams. Every day at the end of class we do dreams. And I'm like, why are we doing this? Waste of time, right?
Yeah, a lot of students are
waste of my time.
Yeah.
So then I began noticing. So there was kind of back to what we were saying about the conscious mind. There was something that was neat or attractive, but there was a part of me that was like, poo-pooing it. So there was the duality, and I began to start making notes. I remember keeping a list of what the symbols were. Okay, animals, habits. Okay, and then horses, different things were different things, right? I was like, so then I created an Excel spreadsheet. I was like, what? And then it was a good few months, and here's a realization: I was laughing. Why am I doing all this work and creating all this effort into something that supposedly I think is dumb? So I settled that down and said, well, there's something that I like here. And that was years ago. So fast forward probably 10 years after that. And then a good friend of mine, Randy Risto, which was the prior
director of the Chicago branch of the School of Metaphysics.
Director of Chicago branch, and he was also on the Dream.
That's right. I forgot
was Randy and Carrie all the time.
I forgot it was
every
Randy.
single Wednesday.
Yeah.
So dreams were always so close to me. Like, how did I attract that?
Yeah.
That was interesting. Even though I was, and I did settle the this is dumb. I settled in the first couple of years, right? So then it was probably it was the end of COVID or mid-COVID. Kerry Keller, who was the National Dream Coordinator, had asked me, he said, hey, look, I want to move away, because the school does a good job of allowing us to enter into activities that we think we may not be good at, but get the practice, right?
Because we want to learn, you know.
Yeah, we call them lab positions, yes.
Yeah, we call them lab positions. It's a service position in a way, but really it's a place, and for anyone who's ever interested in SOM coursework, it's a way to apply your metaphysics. I mean, the main program we call is Applied Metaphysics, right. Mastery of Consciousness.
Right. And I remember that day very well. We were still meeting on Zoom, and I was having a bad week and a worse day at work. And then Carrie's talking about, they had a board meeting, and they're looking at getting someone else. And Mike, you were the unanimous choice. And I was angry.
I kind of remember this.
Do you remember this?
I do remember this.
I don't know if we have time for the story. It's so interesting how dreams play into this and knowing the mind. I was angry and I was like, and he's talking about how, there was a few names and you were the unanimous one. And then Dr. Terry Martin, who has passed away since.
Yeah.
I didn't know her that well, and I got to know her through dreams. Carrie says, and then unsolicited by anyone, Terry Martin started saying all these wonderful things about you and how you're going to be great for the position. And then I went from anger to tears. And I was just like, what is happening to me emotionally? Then I'm like angry and then I'm crying. And I realized that I filled my consciousness with a lot of doubt and probably self-hatred, if that's kind of a strong word, based on what was happening in my waking experience at work. I was having just a bad day, and then all these good things, basically there's no room to allow the compliment to come in, as Carrie was talking. And now Terry says, I wasn't there for any of this. So now when he mentions her, she was someone that I would have 2 or 3 words with here and there, and I don't say love dearly, but I wanted to get to know her more. And that softened something in me, and that's when I said, okay, yes, I'll do this. Just because I realized how I would, through anger, push things away.
And, I'm really glad you shared that story, just because, and we talked about this a lot in the show, is like, as we go through our life, like our normal human life, like that's one of the most spiritual things we can do, or at least there's an opportunity, because we see ourselves in life, and you can have, all these inner experiences. I want to share a story kind of quick about dreams. And
please.
So, I had a student. I won't say her name. You know her, just because obviously I don't have her permission. But so we're good on time, Alex? Okay, cool. Okay, good. Alexander had to make a noise and break my concentration. No, my concentration is good. Shout out Dr. Carey. Hopefully have him on the show in like a week or 2. But anyway, so so I had a student, and she really bought into the program. She struggled with the discipline, but hey, me too. But she really, really, really wanted to interpret her dreams. And I'll let you say it, like, just for the audience. If anyone wants to learn how to interpret their dreams, like, can you teach them our practice? Like, what do you do? Not to interpret, sorry. To remember their dreams. Like, what's the practice we always teach everyone?
So the practice is get a journal, first of all. Could be a dollar notebook, spiral notebook, or some fancy book, just a journal just for dreams. And then before you go to bed, you write the following date. So today's the
30th.
30th. So tomorrow you'd put 5/1/25, tomorrow's date, so it's tomorrow's dream. Put that date, and then you write the sentence, I will remember my dreams.
And you say it out loud as you write it.
Say it out loud. And then you're really not that isn't 100% guarantee yet. By writing it out and making it important, it's incredible how much more dreams will come to you. Maybe that day or pretty quickly you'll get a dream.
Yeah, and then the next day you just try to write anything. And I would really say it's tried and true. Like you said, it doesn't work always instantly. Although I will tell people, for a lot of people it does. Like it's like they haven't remembered a dream that wasn't like insane for like the longest time, and then they do this practice, like, oh my God, I remembered my dream. Well, the student, I'll call her Sarah. So Sarah, she was one that took her a while. It took her like 2 months, and she was trying so hard. She's like, Gino, I'm starting to remember like a hazy impression, or like, oh, I remember this like one thing or a color. And I'm like, just keep going, Sarah, just keep doing it. And she really did. And finally she came to class, and this was her dream, and it was so beautiful. So she had dreamt that she was in her bedroom. She was in bed, with a man, sparing the details, they had been intimate, and they were just sort of relaxing, like after, enjoying it. And she said she heard, like the shaking of a bottle, like a pill bottle. And she turned over, and on the end table next to her bed was like a Johnson & Johnson lotion bottle. But she knew there were like prescription pills in it. And she was trying to let go of substance. We do promote being substance free, or at least giving it a shot, here at the School of Metaphysics. Helps with your self-growth. Helps with your success in life, let's be honest. And she reached over for the bottle, and the man next to her stopped her. He said, he brought over, he said, no, you don't need that. When you're with me, you don't need that. And it was just such an incredible dream. So how would you interpret that for our audience?
How would I interpret that?
Yeah. And it was someone she didn't know.
Okay. So the two basic rules of dream interpretation is everything is about the dreamer, and every person, place, or thing is an aspect of the dreamer.
So yeah, so dreams aren't literal. You're dreaming about your mom. You're dreaming about what we would say is you're dreaming about a part of yourself best represented by your mom's picture, blah, blah, blah.
Right. And it's interesting, too, because we know so many people in our lives. Why does that particular person come?
Yeah.
Right. So it's not random at all. Now, this happens to be someone that she doesn't know, so it's an unaware aspect of the dreamer. So if you're being intimate or having sex, that means creation. You're creating.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's with there's a male partner there. Anybody of the opposite gender, opposite sex represents an aspect of subconscious mind.
And someone of the same gender would represent the conscious mind, and then there's other rules for like superconscious, but we don't need to go there right now.
Right. So then she finished with this activity and this act and this thing, and then she's going for pills, and it would benefit to have the dreamer here because the pills would. Now I think the context is this is something that she was taking as a medication.
No.
Right. Oh no. Okay.
I think it was kind of medicine, but also was
recreational.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think she was specifically using that substance, but
something.
Yeah.
Okay. So then she finishes with this creation, and she's going for probably the habitual, right? The recreational thing that created some kind of experience or joy or an effect.
Something
right?
outside of her that made her feel good.
Right, made her feel good. So an effect. And now this person that she had a creation with, which I suspect was enjoyable and fun and all that, right? That also creates having that experience creates different chemicals in the body. Now this unaware part of herself says, no, you don't need that when you're with me. So it is not about being with another person or anything outside the self. So essentially what the beauty in that is that, let me pause for a minute, because it benefits to know that we have thousands upon thousands of aspects of self. The teaching says we have 144,000.
Which is from a symbolic way we interpret the book of Revelations here.
Right.
We also use the universal language of mind to interpret mostly Christian scriptures, but it works crazy well.
And I try to keep a little neutrality to that because I believe that that's the number, but even if you don't believe it, the number is high, right?
Yeah, to say the least.
So that's important to bring that into this dream. So she went to an area of mind to create something, a new idea, something intimate, right? Maybe an area that she doesn't go to often.
Maybe even just like a connection with herself.
Right. And then she created something wonderful and beautiful and enjoyable. And now she's complete with that, and now she's going into probably a habitual way of being, just removed from the creation. So now this aspect of her that she just is getting to know says, no, when you're with me is her.
Yeah.
It's the self.
Yeah.
It isn't about another person. Now you're with this. So he would be subconscious mind where we get to draw from.
Her inner self.
Her inner self, right? So when you're with this part of me, let's say you said Sarah, right? Is
yeah.
Her name for now.
Yeah.
So Sarah, when you're with this part of Sarah, you don't got to be with the other part of Sarah. It's all Sarah. So there's basically three Sarahs there. Sarah the dreamer, Sarah that's going for the substance that is the more outer.
Yeah, it's funny enough, like drugs and alcohol in dreams are like one of the few things that like in a lot of ways often represent like what they represent in the waking life. Something outside of you that just makes you feel good.
And we call it will busters.
We do call it will busters.
And essentially what that means is you have a will to do something and this thing is busting it or breaking it, right?
Yeah, it's cheating what normally would produce a good feeling, which
right.
Can be. I'm not going to say like everyone needs to not do that, but I mean
it can feel good, but a lot of things that feel good aren't always long-term productive or beneficial.
Let me just ask anyone who's ever had a hangover. Oh my God.
Right.
Especially as you get older.
So the neat thing to kind of to wrap that all up is there's three parts of Sarah. The one that she usually goes to, which is the will buster, and now there's this new part that she's getting to know that she can create with, and the creative part is saying, no, you don't got to go to the will buster part when you're with me. And then she gets to choose who she wants to be, right?
Yeah, Mike, it was such a beautiful moment in class because she really was struggling to stay with herself. And I really was trying to encourage her to, at least give it a shot, to go without substances. And she wasn't even, I don't want to put anything out there. She wasn't even doing anything crazy, But like I was really trying to convince her, like, hey, like, just take a break from that. Like, just be with yourself. And I mean, that was just exactly what the dream was. And one symbol you didn't look at, it was in a lotion bottle.
Okay.
So it's like affecting her, like her outer expression. She's using it to like cover up and to soften herself.
Okay.
If you think about it.
Right.
And one thing we haven't really talked about is that something that we say in the School of Metaphysics is what is more commonly called the subconscious mind. We often say that's your soul. Like that would be like what is in common spiritual lingo, like the soul is your inner subconscious mind. And so to me, it was just so crazy because the message was like, if you could just be with your soul, you wouldn't need a substance. And it was so crazy because she was like, that was like the first dream she had remembered in like over 10 years.
And it's interesting that, I wonder what she chose. It seems so beautiful and so blissful. People have a tendency to push that away.
I mean, I've done it too. Sometimes, I think, even though we're talking a lot about the mind and stuff, there is something important to, like, you could say the lower chakras and the body, because, it's important to be grounded in the physical, to be grounded in your body and to be strong in these ways because, my experiences is joking about this in my metaphysics class I take with our friend Carrie, who will hopefully soon be on the show, is that I was getting really into A Course in Miracles earlier this year or last year, and I stopped. You know why? It was working.
It was working. That's why you stopped?
Yeah. It's trying to connect you with the Holy Spirit, which is something we discussed here at the School of Metaphysics, and I was having these really extremely beautiful, powerful thoughts, and it was like overwhelming. It was just too much. Like it would bring me to tears almost. And when you get close to God, I mean, you think about like the Bible, Moses sees the back of God's head and his face was shining. You had to like wrap it in a cloth. So I think some people who get into spirituality, sometimes they get surprised by the things they find within themselves. It can be a lot.
Yeah, it can be a lot, considering, especially if you're the kind of person I think that is, like we said earlier, very much into the physical and conscious mind.
Oh my God,
because
yeah.
the conscious mind is the more limiting, and is what perceives separation. I mean, I'm sitting here and you're sitting there, and we're talking, and you can hear my voice, and I'd have to touch you to and we can see that we're separate, but on a soul level, we're not.
Yeah.
So if we're really into everything being physical, the least bit of spirituality can throw somebody off kilter.
And I think it's also useful for, practicing spiritual or even religious people, anything you want to call it, to remember that, hey, sometimes, you might fall back into that too, because life can seem harsh, or, just the physical mind, the physical body, the physical world can be overwhelming.
I'm thinking of something Dr. Barbara Condren said over the weekend, and I added some more words to it myself. She said, people are afraid of this work because they feel they lose control. And I was like, and I didn't get the rest of what she said. And I wrote that down, and I added a little more to it using my own words. And what came to me is, and it makes sense. The statement does make a lot of sense. So, why is that? When I think actually if the grasp on the physical things is strong, and it can be enjoyable, and it's important to note too, there is nothing wrong with being in the physical and having nice things and enjoying what you have, whether it's a lavish lifestyle, whatever it may be, or whatever you like in the physical. The balance is what is important. But back to what about people being afraid of the work, is it's interesting that I believe, after I went deeper with that, is if you're afraid of the work because you lose control of the physical, you're actually being controlled by the physical.
Yeah.
because
Fuck.
you're
I was so close. I was so close.
come on.
I was so close.
He said puck, so then
Yeah.
so then loosening that is an opportunity to see you can still have the physical stuff. Doesn't mean you have to abandon that.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you have to leave your. And I think you were a big proponent of this with newer students. You get a chance to come to this school and do things, or whatever you're doing with your spiritual growth. You don't have to abandon what you're doing.
No, I think a lot of people
That was
unfortunately
eons
do
ago.
that.
That was,
Yeah.
The Buddha did that, and you don't get to do that.
Yeah, I mean that's not. You can go be a Buddhist if you want to do that. You can go join a monastery, but that's not. It doesn't have to be
Doesn't
your
have to be
spiritual
that
journey.
way.
Well, just because I know you have to get to a really awesome webinar that I'm gonna give you a chance to talk about in a couple minutes, I usually like to end the show just by asking if there's anything else that you feel like you didn't get a chance to say, or just something that comes from the heart. This is your chance to say it now, and then there will be an opportunity for you to talk about what you're involved in right now.
Yeah. So what I'll speak to briefly is just the experience that I had with this National Dream Hotline. We, like Gino said, every single week I lead an event called the Dream Webinars every single Wednesday at 6:30, and then once a year we commit the fourth weekend in April to Dream. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then I get to plan it and get people involved in it. And this year, it brought just such an expansiveness. We had every single school branch, with the exception of one, involved, which I think is great. And I counted between 27 to 29 people. So figure 28 people plus or minus, mainly current students and a few alumni. And my father recently passed away, and I've been having, recently is like just a few months ago, I've been having more and more realizations as to how I'm doing things based on his learning. And I asked everybody to, with the hotline, is think of this as an experience, not just something that we're doing. And I began to realize that my father was great at building relationships. And he knew that the experience was the seed or the catalyst, or that the relationship was the byproduct of the experience. Come and have an experience, and in that experience, I'm going to build a relationship with this person. And he came to this country with typical immigrant, right, with a few $100s and not really knowing a whole lot of anything, but he was good at connecting, and he used that in everything he did. So it is, yeah, I'm just filled with a lot of, it's endearing to me. It's filled with a lot of joy and a lot of love that people got to connect and do things that they normally wouldn't. So wherever this goes, whenever it's hearing our voice, hopefully you get a chance to either talk to us or meet us or something that leads to something greater. That's essentially what I would share.
Well, then, to end the show, I would normally say then I would say the S word, but I'm doing my best. So plug your stuff.
Plug your thing.
Plug your things. Plug your
You can
things.
say that.
Tell us how people can get involved with more dreams and you at the School of Metaphysics if they're interested, because I know you might be thinking about starting up an applied class for in the somewhat near future.
Yeah, I'm currently teaching a short course. I think I might do one more.
On dreams, that is.
Yeah, dreams, or maybe
I know Carrie wants us to do a concentration class.
maybe a concentration class. But I think I'm going to do another short course. And what I want to do is the applied class that Gina's talking about. It's the longer course that does everything: dreams, concentration, visualization, everything, and it meets weekly. So yeah, I'm looking for people to do that, and
that would be in the Palatine area of northwest suburb of Chicago.
Palatine Branch School of Metaphysics, and I was going to say something else.
The dream class was also Tuesday nights.
7:30 here at Palatine Branch, and then as far as the dream webinar, which is every single Wednesday, 6:30 Central time.
6:30 to 7:30. That is. It's about an hour.
Yep, thank you. And the way to connect with that is go to dreamschool.org. Again, dreamschool.org, scroll down, and then you're going to see Attend Webinar. You hit that link and you register. And
it's free. There'll be a panel of experts. You can get your dreams interpreted. You can just learn about dream interpretation in general. You get to see Mike, and I think that'll be our show for today. Thank you for being on.
Thank you. Blessings and be well.
Awesome. And just